The Cincinnati Reds may have found the guy to make the outfield much better in 2023 as Nick Krall went out and found a diamond in the rough again. We'll tell you why on today's Locked On Reds. Let's go.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds with myself, Jeff Carr, and my co-host, Stephen Offenbaker. We are lifelong Reds fans that have turned an addiction to this team into information for you. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to us talk some Reds with you. We encourage you. If you're listening, hit us up on Twitter or check us out on YouTube and drop a thought in our comments section. Talking Reds is what we do, and we want to talk Reds with you. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Thanks, as always, for making us your first listen. We are free and available on all platforms. And today, we are celebrating another humdinger of a trade by Nick Krall. Will Benson is exactly what this team needed. We'll tell you why we're so excited for him to come to Cincinnati, how Benson can make this outfield and this lineup better, and who the odd man out is. Plus, we've got a thought about a guy who got cut as part of this trade. That's all coming up here on today's Locked On Reds. That's brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. And where we are going to start, Steve, is with the trade. Now, if you see the headline go across and you see Reds acquire Will Benson, strike me if I'm wrong, he wasn't in the MVP race last year.
Just missed it.
Just missed it a little bit. Wasn't in the Rookie of the Year race last year. No. So people are probably thinking, so who is this guy? He has the profile of a guy that the Reds can build their outfield around.
Now, I know that people are still very hungry for some kind of press conference trade. I get it. I get that how on the surface a lot of Reds fans looked at this and kind of rolled their eyes and gave it a whatever. But you're right. This is a move that has potential impact on the outfield for multiple seasons to come. Will Benson had a handful of big league games last season. He's still considered a rookie. He's rookie eligible. He's going to come into Cincinnati and immediately compete to be a starter on this team. Now, I think he'll be a platoon guy. For those of you out there that missed Jeff's crossover with the Locked On Guardians folks right after this deal went down yesterday, go back and give that a listen because there's a ton of great information in there. But listening to that, Jeff, I think I agree with what it sounded like the consensus of your conversation was that this is going to be the left-handed part of the center field platoon. I think that's where we end up with Will Benson because his numbers grade out in such a way that he's going to be able to play. His defensive metrics say that he can play center field, especially in Cincinnati. So I think this trade actually is a lot bigger deal than it looks like on the surface because I think it dramatically changes the outfield in Cincinnati right now today.
No, I think we are going to look back on this deal and say this was a key trade that Nick Krall made because, like you mentioned, he's a left-handed hitting center fielder. He can stick in center field. This isn't like Jesse Winker could play center field in a pinch. No. This guy can play there. And the platoon splits is something that comes up a little bit as far as when you ask, can he play every day? He's got to show that he can hit lefties. The average in AAA wasn't that bad against lefties. It's that his slugging percentage took a huge hit. He only slugged .375 against lefties in AAA. But we're talking about a dude that has power. Steve, what did this lineup not have last year?
It did not have a lot of power or talent, but power is where you're going.
Yes. Power is you're not wrong about the talent either, but yeah, power is key. And he's got a lot of it. On the scouting grade of a scale of 20 to 80, he has a raw power grade of 70, which is amazing. and he's a game power rating. Right now it's 50, but they said that it could be as high as 60 pretty soon here. And even, like I mentioned, just a quick synopsis of my conversation with Justin Letta from Locked On Guardians. He says that he has 40 homer upside. Whether or not he can get there will depend on if he can actually play every day, but it's not because of like defensive limitations or base running limitations that would keep him out of the lineup. It's just whether or not he can learn to hit lefties.
Well, and I don't know if you know this or not, but Great American Ballpark is kind of known as a hitter's park. I don't know if you've heard that before.
Might have heard that something.
Yeah, no, he's coming to a ballpark where he's going to play 81 games. That's going to, his game's going to play well there. We're talking about a guy that has some defensive upside in an outfield that's a little bit smaller. I can see a lot of home runs getting robbed out there in the outfield with
big arm too, is what
with him out there playing defense. And then the fact that he's got this much power in a ballpark that once it warms up, the ball jumps. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be hitting balls into the river every day, but I do feel like his power numbers are a very nice, to make this a Michelin star moment. His power numbers pair very nicely with Great American Ballpark. I think that, if you're a guy that, has the potential to hit the long ball like he does, you're pretty excited to be coming to Cincinnati and getting an opportunity to put that power on display. And I foresee a lot of home run balls out there to my favorite spot in the world, the Budweiser bar down the right field line.
Hit that bow tie bar. Yeah, if Nick Kroll doesn't like walk into a conversation with a position player's agent and says, "I see you have a lot of power. May I pair it with Great American Ballpark for you?" Yes, that's perfect. I love that. Because he has so much power. Even the stats show it. In 401 plate appearances at AAA last year, he had a slugging percentage of .522 in 400 plate appearances. We're not talking about a small sample size. We're talking about a whole season. He slugged .522. And I know AAA, there's still a little bit, of translation there between the minors and the majors, but it's not low minors. We're talking about AAA here. Plus, the other thing that's good about him, it's not just that he can hit the ball really far. Aristides Aquino could hit the ball really far, Steve, but Aristides Aquino didn't know a ball from a strike. On the other hand, Will Benson does. In fact, last season in 2022, he took his strikeout rate down. It was in the 30% range there in 2021. He cut it to 22% last season. Walks a lot too, had a .426 on base percentage. That was another thing that Justin said, is that he's going to take and he's going to eat a lot of pitches, and he's going to be a nuisance for opposing pitchers.
And I think that's something this lineup really lacked last year, especially once Joey Votto was gone, was having guys in the lineup that could make the opposing pitcher work. One of the things about today's pitching game is we all know that most starters don't make it past the sixth inning. They usually don't get through the lineup the third time. And you need hitters in your lineup that are going to make a pitcher throw 10, 15 pitches per at bat. If you can get guys in the lineup that can do that and get into that bullpen sooner, it's an advantage for the offense. So I think this is a great pickup in that standpoint, having additional guys around that'll just make the other guys work a little bit more. I think the Reds really lacked that last season. They didn't have guys in the lineup that knew the strike zone, that could command the strike zone, that could battle. And this changes that a little bit.
And there was also something too, and you saw this, and I didn't see this whenever the deal initially went down, but there's this other side of baseball, the chemistry side, something we don't necessarily talk about a whole lot, but you had mentioned you saw this, that he was in Taylor Chamel's wedding with Tyler Stevenson. So he's already got a relationship with our key dude here. Like, these two dudes could be in the middle of the Reds order for the years to come.
And clearly they're at least more than casual acquaintances. The connector there, the common denominator could be Taylor Trammell. But they were both in Taylor Trammell's wedding, and hat tip to C. Trent Rosecrans. I saw this on his timeline is where this little bit of information came from. But this is good. This is there's something to be said for chemistry. Jonathan India hit on it a lot after the trades last season. So it's good bringing in known commodities, I think.
I think I'd rather have a friend of a friend than whatever Tommy Pham is with everybody else.
This is true. Nobody's getting punched in the face over their fantasy football, at least to start the season.
But I know this. Will Benson is the outfielder that the Reds didn't currently have, but desperately needed to build their outfield around.
All right, coming up, we're going to be talking about what this lineup is going to look like now and what the impacts of this trade are on the Reds roster moving into the 2023 baseball season. But before we get to that, I want to talk to you about the sponsor of today's podcast, and that's FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sportsbook in America. That's FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports easy and fun. Download FanDuel now so that you can bet on Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. That means you listened to Jeff and took the over. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly as soon as the game is over. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Oh, and now that sports betting is legal in Ohio, Locked On has the perfect show to help new and seasoned gamblers get their bets in on time and correct every time. Download and subscribe to the Locked On Bets podcast for daily picks and analysis. It's available wherever you get your podcasts, just like Locked On Reds. Coming up tomorrow, this is last one's coming up tomorrow. We are going to be doing a live Aloha Friday show. You guys know that's my favorite show of the week, where we put you in the driver's seat. We take your questions, we take your comments, and we let you kind of steer the ship, at least for most of the show. And within reason, you guys, I read all of the comments, even though I don't put them on air. I've been watching you guys. You guys are hilarious. I love it.
And that's at 1:30 p.m.
That's at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. The Aloha Live Friday edition of Locked On Reds. That's coming up tomorrow.
Absolutely. And you know what's coming up tomorrow, Steve? We're probably going to be talking a little bit more about this whole Will Benson thing, because Will Benson has really changed this roster around, because the Reds, I mean, the opportunity abounds. And sure, we're talking about the potential of Will Benson. He's not an established dude just yet, but he has the profile that he could be established pretty quickly. And that's not something that the Reds have in their outfield. So with that, he is going to get the lion's share of time at center field simply because of that talent. And you pair with it that's the theme of today is pairings. The fact that there's just not that many people that are competing with him here. When you're talking about right-handed pitching, he's going to be the dude that's in the lineup every day in center field.
I think so. And really, and we didn't talk about this up top, but Benson is a former #1 first round. I mean, not a #1 draft pick, but a first round draft pick.
14th overall.
He's going to be competing with another first round draft pick. It's going to be the battle of the first round draft picks that didn't quite hit like they were supposed to. But I like this for a couple reasons. I think that if ever the Reds had done something that's going to push Nick Senzel a little bit, it's this. This is a clear shot across Nick Senzel's bow. Like, this guy's coming to take your job. We brought him in here to take your job. So if there's not a greater motivator than that, as far as I'm concerned.
And Benson's 24 too. I mean, this is
24. Yeah. If this is a straight platoon situation, Jeff, you're absolutely right. Benson is going to get the majority of the playing time out there in center field. So it makes it very interesting what the Reds will do next, because, I think that I think that Nick Senzel's in trouble.
Yes, and especially when they start to work him in. I imagine, because David Bell has said this in the past about lefties, especially rookie lefties, that he wants to ease them in against left-handed pitching because it's just different at the major league level. Like, not every left-handed pitcher in the minor leagues can execute the arsenal of pitches that major league lefties can do. So there's going to be a little bit of hand-holding there. I don't necessarily think we'll see him start that first game against a left-handed pitcher, but any right-handed pitcher on the mound, that's when we're going to see Will Benson. And we've already seen some dominoes fall. In fact, we talked about Alejo Lopez a little bit as a possible 40-man cut here. Yeah, I know it's a bummer to see this, but he was immediately cut because Will Benson's on the 40-man. The Guardians were trying to clear space on their own 40-man roster by trading him. It's just looking at this deal. This dude is so good. And I'm totally okay with the moves that were made here. And we're going to talk more about Alejo Lopez here in a few minutes. But you're right. I am all in on them pushing Nick Senzel. And I also think that this kind of makes TJ Friedl the odd man out.
That could be the case. I mean, for TJ Friedl to not be completely out of the picture, the Reds are going to have to carry 6 outfielders. Now, that's not out of the realm of possibility. I can see that happening on the 26-man roster. But the playing time is going to be what's interesting, because I think you and I have already decided that, it's the Jake Fraley show over in one of the corners.
100%.
And that's going to be a straight platoon. And we talked about it being Pinder being the other half of that particular platoon. We wondered what they would do in center. We thought that it would be a platoon between Nick Senzel and TJ Friedl. That looks to not be the case now. It's going to be a platoon between Nick Senzel and Benson getting probably the majority of that playing time. And then in the other corner, it looks to be Will Myers, who can probably play every day, not so much of a platoon. Now, you do need one more guy that can possibly come in late inning swaps based on the pitchers that are on the mound and rest and so on and so forth. So that gives Friedl a little bit of opportunity there, I think. But as far as the overall playing time, the playing time that Friedl was going to get has probably been cut in half now.
Yeah, and when I think about that too, the chances of Friedl making this roster now is that if we're considering him the last position player there, 2 things that the Reds are going to look there is positional flexibility and bat. What does he bring to the table? TJ Friedl does not have power. We know this. We know that he is not a power hitter. He's fine hitting for average. He's never going to blow the doors off there, but he's just going to be a solid singles hitter. And from all reports, Jason Vossler is a power hitter. And I think that, like we said, the great thing about the Will Benson edition is his power. I think the Reds may also lean toward power here as well, because Vossler and Friedl, both lefty bats. Vossler might be able to play some corner outfield, definitely play some infield. So the positional flexibility is a lot more than TJ Friedl. I just think that it's going to be a long shot for TJ to be on the opening day roster at this point.
Yeah, and I think they still have the ability to send him down to Louisville as well. So, Friedel's not a bad insurance policy, right. And I could totally see him, starting the season in AAA, and at some point in the season he'll get a call up. It just will happen. Everybody's not going to be healthy all year long, so I wouldn't surprise me at all. Last man on the roster, first guy out of Louisville. I mean, that's the tier that he is. So I'm not gonna lose much sleep over the fate of TJ Friedl. I think that, whatever happens with him kind of strikes me as, okay, that's probably how he should be handled.
And there's going to be injuries. There's going to be change. And, there is a chance. Obviously, we are being super bullish on Will Benson, but there's a chance that he struggles and maybe he needs some time at AAA. Then you can swap TJ Friedl. You do have that insurance policy. Like we said, this outfield, it's going to be a wealth of opportunity all year long. Can Jake Fraley learn how to hit left-handed pitching? Can Will Benson learn how to hit left-handed? Like, all this stuff comes into play. And then are we going to get to the point this season where we see any of the shortstop prospects get moved to the outfield, and will they be in the major leagues? I mean, Matt McClain, are we going to see him in the second half of the season, and whose spot on the roster does he take? So there's lots of questions that are going to be asked there. But one thing is for sure, at least early on in the season, and I believe all season long, because I think he's just going to grab the bull by the horns here, Will Benson should see the lion's share of playing time in center field.
Yeah, I agree with you. I
Yeah.
really do. I think that's how it'll play out.
But like we mentioned a moment ago, Alejo Lopez was cut. And while we understand it in one sense, we are completely baffled in a totally different sense. We'll explain why coming up next. Before we do that, though, I want to let you know you can follow the podcast on all platforms, including right here on YouTube. If this is your first time watching us, thank you so much for doing so. Make sure you drop a comment, a question, whatever you've got down there in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you. Like we said, we'd love to talk Reds, and we want to talk Reds with you. Also, in between episodes, you can talk Reds with us on Twitter, as long as Twitter works, that is. You can follow Steve at S. Offenbaker with 2 Fs. You can follow me at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. And you can follow the show at Locked On Reds. All right, Steve. So part of this trade, I don't think we even mentioned the entire parameters of the trade. No, you mentioned the entire parameters of the trade. The player to be named later, and also Alejo Lopez was cut.
Another important distinction there: player to be named later or cash. So it tells me by them including that. I bet you this ends up being cash. I really think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think, and I've been looking. I haven't seen that there is a list. We always talk about the lists with player to be named laters. I don't see a list. So I think you're right. I think it's going to be cash. But Alejo Lopez was DFA'd, which could mean a lot of different things. He could pass through waivers and still be on the team, at least be a non-roster invitee. He might get claimed. We might see him on a totally different team here very soon. But there's really 2 schools of thought with this, because you and I have been Alejo Lopez stands for the better part of a year now. We talked about the value to him. He's not a power hitter. We're never going to see homers and extra base hits in large numbers from Alejo Lopez. What we're going to see is singles and getting on base and causing havoc on the base paths. That's what his game is. However, that was never enticing for the Reds.
Yeah, and I don't think he ever really got a good, just long view chance to show what his game is. I mean, we kind of think we know what his game might have been, but he never really got to put it on display. I think there's a better than 50% chance he gets claimed by somebody. I think that especially the bottom tier teams in the league that are just kind of looking to, say they've done something and shake things up a little bit and put a guy on the field that could have some success. Alejo Lopez fits that bill all the way around. He doesn't cost a lot of money. He can play multiple positions. He looks like a guy that can get on base for you. He looks like a guy that can steal some bases for you, especially with the new rules coming in. So I think someone's going to pick him off of waivers and bring him out to spring training in the hopes that he can be a regular player for them. And for Alejo Lopez, I kind of hope that's what happens. Clearly, for whatever reason, the Cincinnati Reds don't believe in him like you and I believe in him and like he believes in himself. When you find yourself in a working situation like that, it's time to move to a new employer. And that being said, I hope that someone plucks Alejo Lopez out of the organization and that he goes and has success.
And that's the part of this that we get. We understand on the field performance, they're evaluating, they just didn't see it. That's fine. That makes sense. The part that doesn't make sense is the fact that he was included in the offseason marketing program for the Reds.
This is the baffling part. This is the part that is absolutely mind-blowing. Alejo Lopez was one of the headliners of the Reds Caravan. I mean, he wasn't a throw-in. He was one of the headliners. And I don't know if that says that the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing as far as these players in the Reds front office, or if they went down the 40-man and like everybody said no until they got to Alejo Lopez, because clearly Alejo Lopez was the last man on the 40-man roster. He was guy number 40 because he's the guy that got DFA'd when they made a move. So to have him out on the Caravan and to be putting him front and center and subject fans to waiting in line to meet and take a picture with this guy who's gone. He's gone. Didn't even make it to spring training. He's gone. It feels like a huge missed opportunity. It's very confusing to me that they would allow this to happen. And I guess they're not going to come out and say, Jeff, oh, well, we asked everybody else and they said no. They're not going to tell us
Bad
that.
luck.
But
Yeah,
it really feels like that's what happened.
I almost feel like this was something that they're like, okay, we've done this in years past. We have to continue to do this. We have to market the team. And then they just kind of waited until the last second to plan it, because think about this from a player's perspective. The Super Bowl is in Phoenix. You have the Waste Management Open PGA Tour event that is in Phoenix all this weekend. Pitchers and catchers report next week. So it's not as if you're going to move into your spring training housing, whatever that might be, condo, apartment, whatever have you, Airbnb, whatever. You're not going to move into that the day before you're supposed to report to camp. That's going to be a recipe for disaster for you as a player. So you're going to want to get there early. So probably what you've done is you've already planned out this, the month of January for yourself, that you're going to get to Arizona, you're going to get set up, and you're probably going to start getting in shape. Or, maybe continuing your conditioning. I'm guessing they're not just starting conditioning at this point. At least that's where my optimistic brain takes me. So with that, you're busy. And then you get a call up on the phone like, hey, we want you to go out on the Reds Caravan to the eastern portion where we're going to travel to West Virginia and all this other stuff. And like, dude, I just moved my family to Arizona for the next couple of months. Like, you could have called a little bit earlier. I just think that there is a feeling around this. When I look at this and just say, I don't know this for a fact, but it seems like the Reds Caravan was hastily planned. And when you're touting a guy like Alejo Lopez, a guy that you have not committed to as a organization, and yet somehow you're trying to run him out there to fans, and you're trying to show fans reasons to be excited for the season, and then immediately, before anybody even reports to camp, that guy's not even going to be on the roster anymore. That is such a bad look, and I don't understand why they didn't see that coming.
I think you could be right about a lot of this, Jeff. Anybody that follows the crafty lefty, Chris Welsh, on Twitter saw that he's been in Hawaii for the last month. He comes out here every year, and I got the opportunity to sit down with him and have coffee down here by the beach last week. And one of the things he mentioned was the challenge, as you're describing, that people were having getting set up in Goodyear because of the Super Bowl and because of the PGA. And that unlike a lot of other years, it's been hard for everybody to get in there and get settled. So I think that is probably a very valid point, Jeff, that people got there early, they got settled in, and no, they didn't want to go out and do things, and they didn't want to uproot again. I think what it says to me the most is that some of these things that we used to think were strengths of the Reds, as far as relating to the fans and the events for the fans, the Reds Fest, the Caravan, these things, they've taken a hit recently.
Yeah. And,
I think that hit coincides with Phil Castellini being more in charge. It's not just about the things that he said last opening day, but he has, over the last 2 to 3 years, taken a much greater, much more active role in day-to-day being the boss. And that's when we started to see the changes in some of these things that have always worked and have always been great for the fans. So for me, I think that's the problem. I think that these events that were once the highlights of what the Reds were trying to do have been moved into the afterthought category, like you say, and it shows.
And I don't want to seem like we're unfairly attacking anyone here. This is a 1+1 observation. I see this, so this is what I'm thinking. Like, I don't think we're coming out of left field with these observations here. And the idea of the Caravan, I think they just should have continued what they did with the Reds Fest. I thought Reds Fest, they did a good job of pushing the narrative of the future. The future is bright.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about all these young studs. And then none of those guys were on the trip. I mean, you had Jose Barrero out there who's going to be fighting for his major league life here in the first month of the season or so. You've got Alejo Lopez, you got TJ Friedl, you got all these different dudes that, more power to them. They made it to the major leagues, but at the same time, what is their outlook for this team, for this future? And that was always in question. I don't think even the casual fan thought that they were meeting a guy that is a integral part of the future of this team. So there's a little bit of a huge swing and miss here that I think that when it comes to marketing this team, marketing this product, you've already got lots of fans saying, why on earth am I coming to the ballpark to watch this team? And you just served it up to them on a silver platter to explain to them why they should.
Well, this I know, Jeff. Some of the moves that they made, we don't necessarily understand, but at the end of the day, we agree with. I think we both agree that the outfield is better today than it
100%.
was 2 days ago. I think there's going to be more and more interesting battles in spring training. I don't recall a spring training that's going to quite look like this one, where there's going to be position battles all over the place. And I know this, we're going to have everybody covered every step of the way.
Absolutely, Steve. And that's how we're going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. Coming up tomorrow, it's another Aloha Friday, and we can't wait to talk to you. Make sure you join us at 1:30 p.m. right here on the Locked On Reds YouTube channel. But thanks for making Locked On Reds your first listen. Now make your second listen Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts, just like you and me here at Locked On Reds. Steve, as we move forward, and we've got Aloha Friday tomorrow, we got pitchers and catchers reporting next week. We're back to 5 episodes a week next week. What can people expect from us?
They can expect us to be monitoring the transactions, following the rumors, questioning the moves, watching the battles, and then reporting back and keeping each and every viewer and listener locked on Reds every single day.